The other people in the department, the jerks, I found myself thinking, as Henry must have thought so often, found this last request humorous, nearly side-splitting. But I, upon whom the burden fell, didn't think it was funny at all. Oh, it was typical Henry, all right, getting someone else to do his work, his dirty work for him. Cancel a date? Henry was always imposing on other people, because he thought it made him imposing. Henry was not imposing. He was an ass. He thought he was a stallion, but he was just an ass. What had women seen in him? He'd had women by the score, not just this Alice Slatsky, whoever she was. Why? He was crude, sloppy, dirty, unkempt, balding, overweight, and he did smell. A greasy, earthy, almost fungal odor I could never endure long enough to identify. It had to be that quality known as animal magnetism, that and Henry's mind, which was, everyone had to admit, brilliant in its own perverse way. And now, rather like a court eunuch, I was supposed to phone a strange woman and tell her that Henry couldn't make a Friday engagement because he was dead. Even worse, I was supposed to lie about it, invent some car crash. I don't like to lie. Henry knew that. Logically speaking, I believe that lying is more trouble than it's worth. That's why I advocate the truth, not because of its own merits, not because I believe that the truth will necessarily set you or me or anybody free, but because lying can get very complicated and can turn a tiny disagreement into a thermonuclear event. Time after time, in history and literature, the record is there for all to see, the lesson learned. Lying does not work. I avoided on that strictly practical basis. In this case, I had no idea what I was stepping into, only that Henry was asking me to lie for him. Even deceased, he was being disagreeable. One of our ongoing arguments, in fact, had been about lying. I was against it. Henry defended it staunchly. I presented my case and he laughed at me, called me a toady. A toady to the truth is what he actually said. His position was that since there is no such thing as clear and absolute truth in our world, then we should not feel absolutely bound to any of the lesser truths. He accused me of sentimental folly and said it was just an urge to please my mother. Then he switched tracks and accused me of arrogance and pride. It's not merely pragmatic to believe an adherence to principle denies the personal, he said with great pomposity. Sometimes lying is just the right thing to do. I could not agree with that. I said his arguments were specious and preposterous. He took that as a compliment. Arrogance and pride? Look who's talking, I said. One who would know, he crowed, proud as ever, of who and what he was. Even if his request didn't call for a lie, which it surely did, there'd still be the logical fallacy ingrained in the note. Sloppy logic offends me. How could I call someone up and say that Henry had left me a note telling me that he, Henry, would be killed in an automobile accident, and would I, Jean, please tell her, Alice, that he, Henry, would not be able to keep the date? It didn't make any sense. Logically, it was garbage. How could he have known about this accident before it happened? If he had known, then it wouldn't have been an accident, which it wasn't. And if he hadn't left me a note, then how could I possibly know about the date? You see how lies compound? It was enough to make my head spin. I couldn't figure it out. I only knew that Henry was reaching out to me from beyond the grave, and I didn't like it any more than I would have if he were alive. He was a dissembling, duplicitous, manipulative jerk, and I had to assume that Satan had met his match with Henry's arrival. It was then I realized the simple reason why Henry had chosen me for this odious task. He knew that I'd do it. I hated the thought of it, and I was in the middle of working on the galleys of my book, Violence and Apathy, subtitled The Fanaticism of Believers, the Skepticism of Ennui. But I would do it. Henry, damn him, he knew how to pick 'em. He had known he could depend on me. I'm a truthful, dependable guy, a schlep in Henry's eyes. As they say, no good deed goes unpunished. And then, beyond all these considerations, there was the undeniable reality of this Slatsky woman. What was her situation? God, what if she were married? It was a definite possibility. I couldn't put that past Henry. Not at all. Henry, so far as I knew, was not particular. Not when it came to that. Unscrupulous. That was Henry. I remember once he made a point of saying that the word should be spelled S-C-R-E-W-P-L-E-S. Scruples. Angrily, imagine being angry with a dead man, I decided to make the call, but I also decided to tell the truth. I would break the date, but not with a lie. And I was doing this for the sake of the unknown Alice Slatsky, not Henry. On a Thursday afternoon, 2 days after Henry's death, I tried her number. I ran my speech through my mind while the phone rang. Hello, Ms. Slatsky. The Ms. was important, covered everything. What if a man answered? Hang up. No, ask for Alice Slatsky. My name is Gene Singleton. You don't know me, but I'm an acquaintance? A friend? I work with Henry Farley. I'm afraid I've got some bad news for you. The phone continued to ring. I hung up the receiver. I tried an hour later, then at night, from home. She answered on the second ring. Hello? Is this Alice Slatsky? I said. Yes, it is, she said. Who is this calling, please? You don't know me, Miss Slatsky. My name is Gene Singleton. She laughed. Oh, I've heard of you, Mr. Singleton. Hank's told me a lot about you. Hank? He has, I said, wondering why I would ever be a topic of conversation for Henry. Hank? And then remembering what a mean, low, bottom-dwelling gossip he was. Henry, dirty Henry, old Hank had loved his dirt. He could roll in it with the best of them. He could have said anything at all about me. Henry had no regard for the truth where other people were concerned. He'd often said he had a fine-tuned knack of knowing who people really were, not what they wanted others to think they were. Oh, yes, she said, laughing. I feel as if I know you almost. What can I do for you? Her voice sounded young. Who was she? I felt panicky, lost. A college student? A prostitute? Henry's illegitimate daughter? I had to go ahead. There was no hanging up now. I'm calling about Henry, I said. I understand you have an appointment with him for Friday, and I'm afraid he's not going to be able to make it. I don't understand, she said. Why can't he tell me himself? Why are you telling me? Because I have to tell you some bad news, I said. Henry's dead. Oh, no, she said. Oh, my God. I'm terribly sorry, I said. I know how shocking this must be. Oh, God, she said. She was crying. How did it happen? I swallowed and took a deep breath. Henry did it to himself, I'm sorry to say. I left out about the part about the car, and the radio had been playing, tuned to an oldies station, and that there was a copy of Playboy on his lap. What? She said, you mean he killed himself? Hank killed himself? He committed suicide? That's the way it appears, I said. Oh my God, oh no, I can't believe it. There must be some mistake. He would never do anything like that. I know, it's terrible, it's tragic, I said. I'm sorry. I hated to keep saying I was sorry, but it kept coming out, and besides I was. I was sorry that bastard Henry, Hank, had put me in this awful position. Are you sure, she said? I mean about the... Yes, I said, I'm afraid so. He was in his car, in the garage, the engine running. It was deliberate. God, I've had guys break dates with me before, she said, choking out the words, but never like this. All I could think of was what a shitheel this guy had been, to everyone, like Hall of Fame. But I said, oh, I'm sure he didn't intend this for you personally. Oh, come off it, she said. I get it now. Blammo, the light goes on. He put you up to this, didn't he? You think this is funny? No, I not at all, I said, flustered. Look, Miss... Suddenly I couldn't remember her name. I'm not lying about this. Henry is really dead, and he really did commit suicide. Why didn't I go the automobile accident route, I was thinking. She did not reply. I could hear her sniffling. I hated Henry. Miss, did you hear me? Henry's dead. I hear you, she said, her voice flat. And you believe me, I said? Please? I'm sorry to be the one to tell you. Believe me. I believe you, she said. The bastard. Well, I said, but being in complete agreement, I couldn't think of anything else to say. That prick, she said. Talk about a guy who'd do anything to get out of a date. I don't think it had anything to do with that, I said. Henry must have had many other problems, pressures. Oh, yes, she said, ignoring me. They say when you kill yourself, you're trying to hurt somebody, to make them sorry. And this is because I wouldn't put out for him. The bastard. I said, Jesus, it sounded like Henry. How could anyone turn him down? He'd show her. That's it, all right, she said. He wanted to do it, and I said no. Hey, with all the AIDS and whatnot floating around, you can't be too careful. Isn't that right? That's right, I said, absolutely. So I said no. You have every right to say no. And now he's trying to make me feel bad about it. Oh yes, this is his way of getting back at me. Now I'm supposed to regret this for the rest of my life. Why did you have to call and tell me this anyway? Because, I said, because he asked me to in a note he left. Oh my God, she said. You see, he left a note, I told you. Only he told me to tell you that he'd been in an automobile accident. What? He wrote that? An accident? That's right. Then why didn't you say that? Because I didn't want to lie about it. I thought you'd want to know the truth. But you didn't do what he asked you to do. What you've done is even worse than a lie. Listen, miss, I said, I'm really sorry about this whole thing. I'll bet you are, she said. You should be. Why couldn't you have just done what he asked? Because it wasn't true, I said. But it was what he wanted. It was his last request. Oh, boy, I said. Look, I'm sorry if I've hurt you. He was thinking of me, she said. I could hear her crying again. With everything else, he was thinking of me. Yes, I said. He was being thoughtful. He loved me, she said. I'm sure he did, I said. His dying wish, he was thinking of me. I'm sure he was, I said. He was like that. Such a wonderful man, she said. I said, yes. I'll never forget this, she said. No, I said, you can always remember. Poor Hank. Yes, poor wonderful Hank. Yes. God, she said, sniffling, I miss him so much. Don't you? It was at this point that I decided, against my nature, against all that I believed, that one little lie might be serviceable and the wisest course. Besides, it's not good to speak ill of the dead. And I knew, without question, that Henry, that malicious, manipulative SOB, would have wanted it that way.